I knew that I bought this for a reason.
Yeah, there you go.
You know?
That was the reason right there,
Yeah.
right?
I hope.
You know. Well, tell me about mining in Nome.
Mining in Nome?
Yep, and your operation
Okay.
over the years.
Um, well, mining in Nome, the man, it's a long history of mining in
Yeah,
Nome.
yeah.
I mean, Nome was it was the last gold rush in Alaska, and it was the biggest gold rush in Alaska.
Uh-huh.
Um, Everybody was already up here on the Klondike and up in the Yukon and everywhere else. And when they talked, when gold was discovered here in Nome, um, everybody from there moved to Nome to the new gold fields that
Right.
were, supposedly richer than anywhere else that was discovered. Um, and then, of course, they found the gold on the beach, which really kicked it into gear.
It started the whole game all over again,
All
right?
over again, right. They had the Ammo Creek, which is right down below us here, which they discovered gold down here on Discovery. They found really rich pans and stuff, the three lucky Swedes they call them, and that once they found that, of course the secret couldn't stay in their mouths.
Yeah.
They had to let it out. So it started this big rush, and I'm looking at a drone behind you.
I know it. I saw it flying.
Of course, right? All these little things happening around us.
How about your family?
My family history. My dad came up to Alaska in the 1930s. He was in San Diego, and the Depression hit in 1933, and he heard that there was work in Alaska because there wasn't any work where he was in San Diego. So him and his best friend Clyde Harvey, they went up to Seattle. They hiked all the way up there, grabbed their grub and all their goods and their bags, and they wanted to go do the Alaska experience and go get some. Basically, they needed to send some money home to Mom
Yeah.
and his brother because his dad had passed away, and it was time to go find some money. There was nothing in San Diego at the time during the Depression, So they walked all the way up to Seattle.
Oh my gosh.
And they got onto a Chinese cattle ship.
Is that right?
Yeah. And he said that he snuck on board. It was either Korean or Chinese, I can't remember, but he got on board the boat and went up to Alaska, and somewhere along the way on the Inside Passage, they were discovered, and he said they were sleeping underneath the cows, underneath the cattle, and obviously urine and cow turds was their bedding.
Sure.
So he said by that time they were so hungry and just tired and dirty, and the guys that found him were absolutely livid, and they were like, "What the hell are you guys doing on our boat?" And so they kicked him off, and it was somewhere down in southeast Alaska. I would say somewhere down in that area. His goal was to get to Homer at the time because they had a family friend that owned a boat business down there. They owned some docks and bed and breakfast type of thing. But back then it was Homer was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So they got they got kicked off the boat. They were hungry. They had just enough money to scrounge up a meal, and away they went. They worked their way and made it to Homer.
Wow.
They got to Homer, and lo and behold, there's the family friend. They got a job, and the way my dad put it, he said it was good money, $3 a day, room and board, but it was cleaning shit houses. And he said that it was a dirty, disgusting job. They had to lift the honey buckets up, he said, and it was slopping, and stuff would run down his arms. It was a horrible story, but this is what they did, to survive.
Yeah.
Of course, when you come up to Alaska and you're in an area like that, you start to hear of things, people talking about where the money's at.
Right.
And stuff. And when you're young, that's where you want to be. You want to follow the adventure. So they followed the adventure to the word was is there was some people hiring for gold mines in Fairbanks area, and so away they went. They got on the railroad tracks and walked across Alaska to Fairbanks area.
Oh my gosh.
And they got hired on by a company that was doing some underground mining.
Uh-huh.
And I have some pictures inside to show you some of the pictures
Okay.
of that when we're done here. But they got on board and started working doing that. And so they had, he did the whole Alaska experience. He ended up building a cabin and living next to the area. It was outside of Fairbanks in the Circle District.
Okay.
They built a cabin. He had a dog team. They had the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And then he started boxing and doing all kinds of stuff like that. But
Then how did he make it to Nome then?
well, I'm getting there.
Okay.
The well, he actually ended up starting a casino saloon. Him and another guy he became partners with.
Uh-huh.
They did the prohibition hit. It took them through the prohibition. He said that there's 15% was allowed alcohol on the barge to shipping to be up there. And he said they would make all kinds of booze and stuff and sell it. And he had guys throw nuggets at him.
Right.
And, you know, breaking up fights. He had all kinds of neat guns and stuff. And he said it was quite the experience. World War II hit. And obviously all the mines shut down and all
Sure.
the money dried up. And everybody went to war to fight for the country. So that's what he did. He went out and got on a ship and went to war. After the war ended, he ended up going back to San Diego. He hadn't been there in a long time, since the early 30s. So now it's the end of the 49, 40,
Uh-huh.
49, 50. Well, he started another business where he was doing some scrap, hauling scrap up to Los Angeles and also moving some other things around and stuff. Well, he put his brother through college, my uncle, and he started working with the San Diego Zoo. He started developing some of the very first stuff that was going on in the zoo, and one of them was walrus. They needed walrus to fill this tank, this
Right.
this new thing that they built. So they went and got these walrus, or they needed someone to get them, and he raised his hand. He said, "Hey, we're going to go get some, we need somebody to go find some walrus for us." And my dad raised his hand and he said, "I'm on board."
I'm on
that."
board.
So I've been to Alaska. I can do it. So next thing you know, he's on an airplane coming up to Nome, Alaska, and out to St. Lawrence Island. So he got to Nome and he saw Nome and he was like, "Wow, this is neat." There's all the old timers and all the old miners and stuff.
Right.
We're in Nome now.
Sure.
And a lot of them that he knew from Fairbanks area, because when he owned the saloon, casino, and all that, they'd all come over here. And so this is the 50s, early 50s. So he went out, he collected walrus for the zoo and brought them back. In the meantime, he saw the railroad track, he saw all the history, and he saw opportunity. And so he kept that, he thought about that for a while. He came back, he did 2 trips, 2 years in a row of getting the walrus and being with the Eskimos out there at St. Lawrence Island and stuff. So he left, he went back again to San Diego, and it's in his head and he's paying attention and he's looking at what's going on in Nome and stuff. Well, he saw that there were some, well, he wanted to bring his kids back at the time, my older brothers, and bring them back for the experience. So he did. He brought them back, and they looked at, he had this new adventure of pulling out the railroad, the old Wild Goose Railroad track, and rebuilding it, and possibly building a railroad track around Catalina Island off the California
Oh,
coast.
is that right?
Yep. And then he ended up selling some of it to Walt Disney. So he did end up buying the whole track, and he sold it. He sold it back to Walt Disney, and they had the railroad, the narrow gauge rail,
Right.
the narrow gauge rail for Disney World, and then the Matterhorn. They had that for a while. They got rid of what was it? I forgot the name of that train ride they had. Anyway, off the top of my head, but they used it for different rides.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, he came back and he had a scrap metal business in San Diego where he saw
Sure.
the price of iron and all that. So they came up, they started doing that, and that's where my dad met my mom. My mom was up here. She had come up. They had a relationship with this guy. His name was Straub. Elmer Straub.
Uh-huh.
And he was building a dredge, and he had also had a trash company here in Nome. So my mom was married at the time to Ed Winkenwerder, which was a half brother of Ed Straub, and Ed, they needed work.
Sure.
So they came up with my brother on my mom's side, and she started a washateria here in town on Front Street, right next to the visitor center now.
Really?
Just to the left of it, that building's still there. So she had that and started washing clothes. So my dad was taking out the railroad, and I think his marriage was not doing well, and my mom's marriage was not doing well. And they started talking, and next thing you know, they ended up becoming a thing.
Uh-huh.
So anyway,
Wow.
how we got this property here, there were some tax lien sales, and there were these mines, these people that own all these claims up here owned a lot of money on taxes, and they needed a way to get the money back, so they put they did an auction on a whole bunch of claims up here. And so a lot of the guys around town, they put money in the kitty to see if they could win the claims, and away went my dad. He went back south, and they all went south, and next thing you know, a letter came in the mail, and it said, "Hey, you've got all these claims."
Oh my gosh.
So that's how we got
That's
this.
how you got it, huh?
Yeah. So that was in the mid-'60s there, and then I was born. My mom and dad ended up getting married,
Right.
and I was born,
And then you actually, your
So there
dad
was-
started gold mining here then, did
well,
he?
he gold mined in Fairbanks. We just kind of played around up here. We
Huh?
did prospecting.
Yeah.
So we every summer we would come up. My grandmother lived here. My mom had moved my grandmother here.
Uh-huh.
We had a reason to come see my grandmother, and then we had the claims here.
Sure.
So we would come every summer as a family to our property here and do gold mining. So we would set up there was an old sluice box in the creek down here that had been there from the old timers, whoever had the claim at the time. So we reset up that, and we created like a little walkway and started shoveling dirt into these sluice boxes,
Right.
and just had fun mining gold and learning about the property and all the countryside and stuff. And we had picnics up here and just enjoyed it. On days like today, it was a kid's dreams to come true. To be mining gold with their family, their mom and dad, and having a good old time.
And then and then it merged into AK Gold Resort then?
It slowly merged into that. It didn't just become a
Right.
gold resort. My father died when I was 18.
Okay.
And I went to work for a company out in the middle of the Seward Peninsula mining gold. It was Thurman Mining. And I went out there and started mining, running equipment, and learning about the land, and running huge amounts of dirt with big excavators and dozers, pushing dirt and stuff, and mining up the creeks. And while I was there, I was thinking, wow, instead of going and working for somebody down south or whatever, and working for other people, why don't we do this on our own land? So I came back and I said, hey, Mom. She had gotten the little container, and she was living up the upper Ammo Peak at the time, and just kind of reminiscing about what she was going to do. So we started. She took a loan out on her house, and we got a dozer and a loader, and we hired a welder, and next thing you know, we started welding up some a big shaker deck,
Uh-huh.
and just took it one step at a time. Then next, we knew where the gold was from us prospecting as
Sure.
a family, so we started pushing up that, and then we're taking the loader and digging it, and it just started as a small hole, and
Currently, you have how many acres up
15.
here?
We have 164, I believe, right in this area, this general area, and then we leased some property also here. And then we leased quite a bit of property also when we were mining from Alaska Gold Company back in the day. So we followed the gold that was, that started at the bottom of the mountain. We worked our way up through the valley and continued to follow it. And then 15 years later, the price of gold was about 13 years later, so about 15, I guess. But anyway, the price of gold dropped.
Right.
And it dropped down to below 300. It was 260 by the time we stopped mining. So we just, no matter how much gold was there, we could not really. It was just not economical.
Wasn't profitable.
So we shut her down and started. I went to work. I went to work in construction. My son was born. I went to work down in San Diego, working construction, working for developers and stuff. And my mom stayed up here with Tony, her new husband, and they lived down here and just kind of enjoyed being retired. Well, while I was down south, I couldn't get that Alaska feeling anywhere else. I would go up to the Sierras and I would go here and there, but I just didn't get that wild Alaskan feeling. So while we were doing our mining, there were times where a lot of tourists would come around and everybody wanted to know about gold mining. So when I was on the airplane, people were asking questions. We even had a bus tour come up several times with the cruise ships to come look and pan some gold and watch our gold mining operation and see what it was like, because we're one of the only ones that are really close to town. So I got this idea that even when I first started running equipment at night, I would always dream of building roads and building some cabins and having a resort, something that I could share with people, and give them that same experience that we had, that was that we're drawn to. It's something that's down in your loins, and just brings you up just to be that close to the earth, and to be able to harvest from the earth and to have that feeling of gold and dirt in your hands. And it's just very addictive, and it's just it's what
driving people today.
And it's a raw feeling that brings people together for some reason. It just does. So we started to. So I came up with a business plan, and it just looked like a really good business plan and a good idea, and we had plenty of people that wanted to come. So we went ahead and put out a booking, some bookings online. Who wants to book? And right away we got quite a few people that wanted to book. So I said, "Oh boy, I better get busy."
You better get some buildings.
So we had an old building from the days when they were working on the pipeline. When they built the pipeline across Alaska, they're called Atco vans, and they built these cities with them. Well, they sold them back when we were mining, and we bought a couple of those. We bought one, and I brought it up, and we lived in it back then. But it had been in disrepair, so we brought up some stuff, some wood and things, and fixed it up. And so we got up here the first season and had people come in, and we did business from our old mining camp. And, we fixed meals, and guys would go out with their metal detectors and find nuggets and stuff, and I would push dirt around, and they loved it, and they loved the experience, and they loved the history of Nome, and, everything that went with it. So we just expanded it and kept working on it, and so we've turned it into, it's an Alaska Gold Adventure Camp. It's Alaska Golden Resort. It's a gold mining adventure camp where you can kind of, get what the old timers had, They can go out and you can get into the dirt and you can find gold and you can adventure. You can see all the history around the area. You can, go out and do some fishing.
You take them out. They can go on their ATVs. You have
We
ATVs.
have ATVs, and there's trails, miles and miles of trails around here, and they're all old historic wagon trails and areas that go into these old gold mines and stuff, and they're all it's just absolutely, it's just littered with mining history.
History, yeah. And
So-
just like you were saying, we were yesterday. We were on the ATVs, and a pipe in the ground was an early sign that early miners were there a long, long time ago doing something.
Exactly, yes. Just a small little pipe in the ground was an indication that somebody was trying to thaw ground and put enough effort into that area that it showed me that there was some gold in there. They don't just stick an old thaw pipe in the ground for nothing.
Yeah.
So that was an indicator to me that I learned over the years that that's a good spot to do some prospecting.
Yeah.
So that's where I dug my hole and ended up finding some gold there.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's turned into a nice streak.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes wherever we go around here, and I'm learning from clients also, because clients will end up going out and discovering things that I never knew about, and they'll bring me there and go, hey, look what I found, and wow, yeah, that's neat. Let's do some panning. Let's grab a loader bucket of some dirt from there and bring it on down, and let's run it and see what
it's like. Huh?
Or sometimes they'll take their metal detectors into areas and they'll find new piles and new areas
Sure.
where there's nuggets, or not, or they'll find old artifacts. We have stuff laying around here, shovels and just
Picks.
and coins and tokens and you name it. All kinds of things that people find in the tundra here.
The thing that's interesting, it seems to be, when miners from years gone by, they just leave their equipment, and today's miners do the same thing. If it breaks down, they just leave it.
Yep, it was too expensive to get anything out of this country.
Yeah.
Whatever comes up to Nome
Stays in Nome.
it stays.